And Mary's question is, to both of you, if you give the same or similar speech over and over again, how do you keep it fresh and interesting to yourself?
So the first thing I tell everybody is, one, that the audience makes a big difference. So you change your audience because when you speak, not only are you connecting with the audience, they're connecting with you. And you feel that energy transfer, and that keeps it fresh. The second thing is that you have to really enjoy it. It has to be an experience that you are there because you want to share. It's a message that you deeply believe in. And that comes across, and the audience feels it, and that keeps it fresh. So I think those are two main ideas that I use to keep mine.
Great.
And could I just jump on that one real quick? Here, hold that. I go along, back up exactly, Mary, what Vikas, did I say it right? Vikas. What Vikas says, and Mark Brown, my coach, put it to me this way, and he said, Darren, ask yourself this question, pick a child from your life. So I don't have children, so I picked my nephew, my oldest nephew, Michael, and he said, if you were going to die tomorrow, what one lesson that you learned from your life would you pass on to Michael to help him through his life? Okay, you don't just jot that down in a second. And my coach made me think about that for a couple days. So goes right along with what he says, that you got to care about the message. And if you care about the message, your thoughts are, give me an audience. And why would you write a new speech all the time? I mean, that's crazy. If you care about something, you know, I can't stand politics. So why would I talk about it? But I care about the message that I lived and learned, and I want to help other people. Well, I should talk about what I'm passionate about. So people come to us and want to learn how to write a better speech, and I say the first step is choose a message that matters to you, because that's the one you're more likely to convey. A salesperson, sell what you believe in.
Great.
So choose better.
Certainly the transition of Dave M. coaching you and you coaching Vikas, what was the progression, the thread that ran through that?
David M. is Dave McElhaney. Is that what you're talking about? Dave McElhaney, who was my first coach, who then introduced me to Mark Brown. Dave McElhaney was someone who was better than I and won the district before, so I went to someone who was better and was where I wanted to go. And then as we got to the higher level, he hadn't won the world championship, so he brought in Mark Brown to help me, and then I had two coaches. But the threads came from both my coaches, and what I learned is what I taught. And Patricia Fripp was another person who influenced, but if you remember when I told the audience in my championship speech, when I said, I brought the woman up in front of me, and she stood there and didn't move. And then I said, please do something with your hands, and I covered my mouth. When I practiced, I said, and I covered my mouth. I literally said, covered my mouth. And Mark said, no. It's more powerful if it's in silence. So a lot of what I learned, I just literally took the same stuff and transferred it to Vikas.
Jason asked was, he tends to write his speeches word for word, he memorizes them, works on his delivery, but he wonders, if you don't do that, how do you keep the stories and examples tight and stay within the time? So how do you get around that straight memorization?
So I've heard that a lot. A lot of people memorize their speeches. I don't memorize my speech. What I do is I practice it enough so that the flow of logic is clear in my mind. And I go from one thought to the next. And I just flow there, I fill in the words. And I don't memorize the the's, all those are different every time. Actually, my final speech, my championship speech is different from what I wrote because I changed a few words at the end. That's how I work. But what I always tell everybody is that's my style. Do whatever you want. That doesn't let you think about the words when you're talking. Because that's the thing that kills the speech, is if you're thinking about the words, you cannot connect with the audience. The words should not be in your mind, it should flow. If you have to memorize the speech, do that. If you don't have to memorize it, whatever it takes so that you're not thinking about the words when you're speaking. And that's the only important thing as far as I'm concerned.
One of the things that I picked up from David McElhaney, my first coach, is he said, Darren, you need to write out your speech. And I said, but you don't understand, that's not how I work. I'm outlines, I'm free-flowing. He said, Darren, if you want to work with me, you need to write out your speech. I said, but that's not my style. He said, Darren, this has nothing to do with style. Thank goodness David held it to me and forced me to write it out. Because when I wrote it out, and I invite you, take one of your stories, just one of them, and transcribe it. And you will learn a lot about your style. You will see that it's blah, 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 blah. David Brooks has a brilliant idea behind this. He said, look at your story and then have it. Half it. Cut it in half. Use the word count, cut it in half, and say the same thing in half the words. And I guarantee you, you'll probably say it better in half the words. But without the visual in front of me, I couldn't do it because of my style. But then once I did get it down to where I wanted, then I memorized it. And then I let it flow my normal way once I've discovered the most concise way to say it.
That's great. That's great advice.
So for editing purposes.
For editing purposes, yes.
And I do the same thing. So I write it out, but when I'm speaking it, it's never the same words. I'm free flowing there. But I completely agree with him. You have to write it out so that when you're editing it, you can get it to the right
That's great.
format.
And I know some of you may not want to. Do you want to be great or not? If speaking is one part of your business, part of your career, or if you just want to be really good, otherwise you wouldn't be here, take the time. Because people are listening to your blah, 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 and then you sit there and wonder why, gee, why doesn't my career take off? I got to spend money in marketing. No! Be great up here.
That's excellent.